In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez, Part 2, Chapter 5, 1948 to 1959. They, 1994 and 1948. Over the interview woman's head, Dede notices the new girl throwing plantain peelings outside the kitchen shed. She has asked her not to do this. That is why we have trash baskets, she has explained. The young maid always looks at the barrel Dede points to as if it were an obscure object whose use is beyond her. You understand? Dede asks her. Si, signora. The girl smiles brightly as if she has done something right. At Dede's age, it is hard to start in with new servants, but Tono is needed over at the museum to take the busloads through the house and answer the phone. Tono has been with them forever. Of course, so had Fela until she started going wacky after the girls died. Possessed by the spirits of the girls, can you imagine? People were coming from as far away as Barahona to talk through this ebony-black Sibyl with the Mirabal sisters. Cures had begun to be attributed to Patria. Maria Teresa was great on love woes, and as for Minerva, she was competing with the Virgencita as patroness of impossible causes. What an embarrassment in her own backyard, as if she, Dede, had sanctioned all this, and she knew nothing. The bishop had called on her finally. That's how Dede had found out. It was a Friday, Fela's day off. As soon as the bishop had left, Dede headed to the shed behind her house. She had jiggled the door just so to unlock it, a little trick she knew, and Dios mío! The sight took her breath away. Fela had set up an altar with pictures of the girls cut out from the popular posters that appeared each November. Before them a table was laid out, candles, and the mandatory cigar and bottle of rum. But most frightening was the picture of Trujillo that had once hung on Dede and Jaimito's wall. Dede was sure she had thrown it in the trash. What the devil was he doing here? As Fela argued later, she was working only with the good spirits. Dede had pulled the door to, letting the old lock catch again. Her head was spinning. When Fela returned, Dede offered her two alternatives: either stop all this nonsense and clean out that shed, or she could not bring herself to state the alternative to the stooped, white-haired woman who was weathered so much with the family. She hadn't had to. The next morning the shed was indeed empty. Fela had moved her operation down the road to what was probably a better spot, an abandoned storefront on the bus route to Salcedo. Minu was furious when she heard what Dede had done to Fela. Yes, that's the way she had phrased it. What have you done to her, Mama Dede? It was disrespectful to your mother's memory. She was a Catholic, Minu, a Catholic. Minu would have none of it. Dede had already told her too much about her mother's falling out with the church. Sometimes Dede worries that she has not kept enough from the children, but she wants them to know the living, breathing women their mothers were. They get enough of the heroines from everyone else. Now Manu stops at Fela's whenever she comes to visit her aunt. It gives Dede goosebumps when Manu says, I talked to Mama at Fela's today and she said. Dede shakes her head, but she always listens to what the old woman has to say. The strangest time was when Manu came from Fela asking after Virgilio Morales. Mama says he's still alive. Do you know where he is, Mama Dede? Didn't your mother tell you? Dede asked sarcastically. Don't spirits know the whereabouts of all of us? You sound upset, Mama Dede, Manu observed. You know I don't believe in all this spirit business, and I think it's a disgrace that you, the daughter of... Minu's eyes flashed with anger, and Minerva herself stood before Dede again. I'm my own person. I'm tired of being the daughter of a legend. Quickly, the face of her sister fell away like water down a slanted roof. Dede held out her arms for her dear niece-daughter. Dark mascara tears were coursing down Minu's cheeks. Didn't she, Dede, understand that feeling of being caught in a legacy? Forgive me, she whispered. Of course you have a right to be yourself. Afterwards, Dede confessed that she did know where Leo Morales now lived. Someone had pointed out the house to her the last time she was in the capital. The comfortable bungalow was just blocks from the dictator's huge wedding cake palace that the mobs had long ago burned down. "So what's the message you're to deliver?" Dede asked as casually as she could. "Message?" Manu looked up, surprised. "I was just to say hello and how much Mama thought of him." "Me too," Dede said, and then, to clarify, "Tell him I said hello too." "So when did all the problems start?" the interview woman's voice calls Dede back to the present moment. Again, Dede feels as if the woman has been eerily reading her thoughts. "What problems?" she asks, an edge in her voice. Whatever feeling she once had for Leo never became a problem for anyone, even for herself. She had taken care of that. "I mean the problems with the regime. When did these problems start?" The woman speaks in a soft voice as if she suspects she is intruding. Dede apologizes. "My mind wanders." She feels bad when she can't carry off what she considers her responsibility, to be the grande dame of the beautiful, terrible past. But it is an impossible task. Impossible. After all, she's the only one left to manage the terrible, beautiful present. "It is too much. If it is too much, I can stop now," the woman offers. Dede waves the offer away. "I was just thinking about those days. You know, everyone says our problems started after Minerva had her run-in with Trujillo at the Discovery Day dance, but the truth is, Minerva was already courting trouble 2 or 3 years before that. We had this friend who was quite a radical young man. You may have heard of Virgilio Morales." The woman narrows her eyes as if trying to make out a figure in the distance. "I don't think I ever read about him, no. He was thrown out of the country so many times the history books couldn't keep up with him. He came back from exile in 47 for a couple of years. Trujillo had announced we were going to have a free country, just like the Yankees he was trying to butter up. We all knew this was just a show, but Leo, that's what we called him, may have gotten swept up in the idea for a while. Anyhow, he had a family in this area, so we saw a lot of him for those 2 years before he had to leave again. So is he Minerva's special friend?" Dede feels her heart beating fast. "He was a special friend of mine and my other sisters too." There she has said it, so why doesn't it feel good? Fighting with her dead sister over a beau, my goodness. "Why was the friendship the beginning of the problems?" The woman's head tilts with curiosity. "Because Leo presented a very real opportunity to fight against the regime. I think that, after him, Minerva was never the same." "And neither was I," she adds to herself. Yes, years after she had last seen Leo, he was still a presence in her heart and mind. Every time she went along with some other insane practice of the regime, she felt his sad, sober eyes accusing her of giving in. "How do you spell his name?" The woman had taken out a little pad and is making invisible zeros, trying to get her reluctant pen to write. "I'll look him up. I'll tell you what I remember of him," Dede offers, stroking the lap of her skirt dreamily. She takes a deep breath, just the way Minu describes Fela doing right before the sisters take over her body and use the old woman's voice to assign their errands. She remembers a hot, humid afternoon early in the year she got married. She and Minerva are at the store, plowing through an inventory. Minerva is up on a stool, counting cans, correcting herself, adding more or less. Then Dede repeats the figure before she writes it down. Usually Dede cannot bear such sloppiness, but today she is impatient to be done, so they can close up and drive over to Tio Pepe's, where the young people have been gathering evenings to play volleyball. Her cousin Jaimito will be there. They have known each other all their lives, been paired and teased by their mothers ever since the 2 babies were placed in the same playpen during family gatherings. But in the last few weeks, something has been happening. All that had once annoyed Dede about her spoiled big-mouthed cousin now seems to quicken something in her heart. And whereas before her mother's and Jaimito's mother's hints were the intrusion of elders into what was none of their business, now it seems the old people were perceiving destiny. If she marries Jaimito, she'll continue in the life she has always been very happy living. Minerva must have given up calling down numbers and getting no response. She stands directly in Dede's line of vision, waving, "Hello? Hello?" Dede laughs at getting caught daydreaming. It is not like her at all. Usually it is Minerva whose head is somewhere else. "I was just thinking." She tries to make up something. But she is not good at quick lies either. Minerva is the one with stories on the tip of her tongue. I know, Minerva says. "You were thinking about Einstein's theory of relativity." Sometimes she can be funny. "You want to call it quits for today?" The hopeful expression on her face betrays her own wishes. Dede reminds them both. "We should have gotten this done a week ago." "This is so silly." Minerva mimics their counting. 4 crumbs of dulce de leche, 1, 2, let's see, 7 ants marching towards them. Suddenly her voice changes. 2 visitors. They are standing at the door. Mario, one of their distributors, and a tall, pale man. Behind him, his glasses thick and wire-rimmed. A doctor, maybe. A scholar, for sure. "We're closed," Dede announces, in case Mario is here on business. "Papa's at the house." But Minerva invites them in. "Come and rescue us, please." "What's wrong?" Mario says, laughing and coming into the store. "Too much work?" "Of the uninspiring kind," Minerva says archly. "But it needs to be done. Our end-of-the-year inventory is now our New Year's unfinished business." Saying it, Dede feels annoyed at herself all over again for not having finished the job earlier. "Maybe we can help." The young scholar has stepped up to the counter and is gazing at the shelves behind Dede. "This is my cousin," Mario explains. "Just come from the capital to rescue ladies in distress." "You're at the university?" Minerva pipes up, and when the young man nods, Mario goes on to brag for his cousin. Virgilio Morales has recently returned from Venezuela, where he earned his medical degree. He is now teaching in the faculty of medicine. Every weekend he comes up to the family place in Lycée. What a serious name, Virgilio. Dede blushes. She is not used to putting herself forward in this way. The young man's serious look fades. "That's why everyone calls me Leo." "They call you Leo because you're always in one fix or another," Mario reminds his cousin, who laughs good-naturedly. "Virgilio Morales," Minerva muses aloud. "Your name sounds familiar. Do you know Elsa Sanchez and Sinita Peroso?" "They're at the university." "Of course." Now he is smiling, taking a special interest in Minerva. Soon the two of them are deep in conversation. How did that happen? Dede wonders. The young man, after all, had headed straight for her, offering his help. "How are you, Dede?" Mario leans confidentially in on the counter. He tried courting her a few months back before Dede set him straight. Mario is just not well. He's not Jaimito, and when neither is this young doctor. "I wish we could get this done," Dede sighs, capping her pen and closing the book. Mario apologizes. They've interrupted the girls in their work. Dede reassures him that it was slow going before the visitors arrived. "Maybe it's the heat," Mario says, fanning himself with his Panama hat. "What do you say we all go for a swim in the lagoon?" Minerva offers. The young men look ready to go, but Dede reminds Minerva, "What about volleyball?" Jaimito will be looking for her. And if she's going to end up with Mario, which is no doubt the way things will settle, she'd rather be with the man she intends to marry. So there. "Volleyball? Did someone say volleyball?" the young scholar asks. It is nice to see a smile on his pale, serious face. It turns out he has played on several university teams. Minerva gets another great idea. Why not play volleyball, and then, when they are hot and sweaty, go jump in the lagoon? Dede marvels at Minerva's facility in arranging everyone's lives, and how easily she assumes they can get permission from Papa. Already the volleyball evenings are becoming a problem. Papa does not feel that the two sisters make the best chaperones for each other, especially if they are both eager to go to the same place. Back at the house, while the young men visit with Mama in the Galleria, Minerva argues with their father. "But Papa, Mario's a man you do business with, a man you trust. We're going to Tio Pepe's, our uncle, to play volleyball with our cousins. How much more chaperone can we be?" Papa is dressing before his mirror. He has been looking younger, more handsome, something. He cranes his neck, looking over Minerva's shoulder. Who's that young man with Mario? Just some cousin of Mario's here for the weekend, Minerva says too offhandedly. Dede notes how Minerva is avoiding mentioning Leo's association with the university. And then the coup de grace. Why don't you come with us, Papa? Of course, Papa won't come along. Every evening he tours his property, hearing reports from the campesinos about what's been done that day. He never takes his girls along. Men's business, he always says. That's what he's getting ready to do right now. You be back before it's dark. He scowls. This is the way Dede knows he's granted them permission when he begins talking of their return. Dede changes quickly, but not fast enough for Minerva. Come on, she says, hurrying Dede, before Papa changes his mind. Dede is not sure her buttons are all buttoned as they head down the driveway to where the young men now wait beside their car. Dede feels the stranger's eyes on her. She knows she looks especially good in her flowered shirtwaist and white sandal heels. Leo smiles, amused. You're going to play volleyball dressed like that? Suddenly Dede feels foolish, caught in her frivolity, as if she were a kitten knotted in yarn. Of course she never plays. Except for Minerva in her trousers and tennis shoes, the girls all sit in the galleria cheering the boys on. I don't play, she says, rather more meekly than she intends. I just watch. The truth of her words strikes Dede as she remembers how she stood back and watched the young man open the back door for whoever wanted to sit by him, and Minerva slipped in. She remembers a Saturday evening a few weeks later. Jaimito and his San Francisco Tigers are playing poorly against the Ojo de Agua Wolves. During a break, he comes up to the Galleria for a cold beer. Hola, prima, he says to Dede, as if they were just cousins. She is still pretending not to give him the time of day, but she checks herself in every reflecting surface. Now her hands clench with tension in the pockets of her fresh dress. Come on and play, cousin. He tugs at her arm. After all, Minerva has long been working up a sweat in the Ojo de Agua side of the net. Our team could use some help. I wouldn't be much help, Dede giggles. Truly, she has always considered sports, like politics, something for men. Her one weakness is her horse Brio, whom she adores riding. Minerva has been teasing her how this Austrian psychiatrist has proved that girls who like riding like sex. I'm all flying fingers when it comes to volleyball. You wouldn't have to play, he flirts. Just stand on our side and distract those wolves with your pretty face. Dede gives him the sunny smile she is famous for. Be nice to us, tigers, Dede. After all, we did bend the rules for you wolves. He indicates over his shoulders where Minerva and Leo are immersed in an intent conversation in a corner of the Galleria. It is true, although Leo is not from Ojo de Agua, the Tigers have agreed to let him play for the weakling team. Dede supposes that the Tigers took one look at the bespectacled, pale young man and decided he wouldn't be much competition, but Leo Morales has turned out to be surprisingly agile. The Ojo de Agua Wolves are now gaining on the San Francisco Tigers. He's had to be quick, Jaimito has quipped, escaping the police and all. Jaimito and his buddies knew exactly who Virgilio Morales was the first night he came to play volleyball. They were split between admiration and wariness of his dangerous presence among them. Jaimito hits on a way of getting Dede to play. Girls against guys, what do you say? He calls out, picking up a fresh bottle of beer. Used to keeping tabs at the family store, Dede has made note of 3 large ones for Jaimito already. The girls titter, tempted, but what about mussing their dresses? What about spraining their ankles on high heels? Take off your heels, then, Jaimito says, eyeballing Dede's shapely legs, and whatever else is in your way. You? Her face burns with pleasure. She has to admit that she is proud of her nice legs. Soon shawls are flung on chairs, and half a dozen pairs of heels are kicked off in a pile at the bottom of the steps. Dress sleeves are rolled up, ponytails tightened, and the squeals of delight, the Amazons, as they've christened themselves, step out on the slippery evening grass. The young men whistle and hoot, roused by the sight of frisky young women girding themselves, ready to play ball. The cicadas have started their trilling, and the bats swoop down and up as if graphing the bristling excitement. Soon it will be too dark to see the ball clearly. As they are assigning positions, Dede notices that her sister Minerva is not among them. Now, when they need her help, the pioneer woman player deserts them. She looks towards the galleria where the two empty chairs facing each other recollect the vanished speakers. She is wondering whether or not to go in search of Minerva when she senses Jaimito's attention directed her way. Far back, almost in darkness, he is poised to strike. He hears a whack. Then, startled by the cries of her girlfriend, she looks up and sees a glowing moon coming down into her upraised hands. Wasn't it already an accident? Dede ponders, rewinding back to the exact moment when she belted that ball. It had sailed over everyone's heads into the dark hedges, where it landed with the thrashing sound of breaking branches, and then the surprising cry of a startled couple. Had she suspected that Minerva and Leo were in the hedges, and her shot was an easy way to flush them out? But why, she asks herself, why would she have wanted to stop them? Thinking back, she feels her heart starting to beat fast. Nonsense. So much nonsense the memory cooks up, mixing up facts, putting on a little of this and a little of that. She might as well hang out her shingle like Fela and pretend the girls are taking possession of her. Better them than the ghost of her own young self making up stories about the past. There was a fight that she remembers. Leo came out of the hedges, the ball in his hand. Jaimito made a crude remark, carried away by his 3+ beers and growing uneasiness with Leo's presence. Then the picture tilts and blurs, the memory of Leo throwing the ball at Jaimito's chest and of it knocking the breath out of him, of Jaimito having to be held by his buddies, of the girls hurrying back to their high heels, of Tio Pepe coming down the steps from inside shouting, "No more volleyball!" But before they could be ushered away, the two men were at the quick of their differences. Jaimito called Leo a troublemaker, accusing him of cooking up plots and then running off to some embassy for asylum, leaving his comrades behind to rot in jail. "You're exposing us all," Jaimito accused. "If I leave my country, it's only to continue the struggle. We can't let Chapita kill us all." Then there had been the silence that always followed any compromising mention of the regime in public. One could never be too sure who in a group might report what to the police. Every large household was said to have a servant on double payroll. "I said no more volleyball tonight." Tio Pepe was looking from one to the other of the young men. "You two shake and be gentlemen. Come on," he encouraged. Jaimito stuck out his hand. Oddly enough, it was Leo, the peace lover, who would not shake at first. Dede can still picture the long, lanky body holding in tension, not saying a word, and then finally, Leo reaching out his hand and saying, "We could use men like you, Jaimito." It was a compliment that allowed the two men to coexist and even to collaborate on romantic matters in the months ahead. Such a small incident, really, a silly explosion over a foul volleyball. But something keeps Dede coming back to the night of that fight, and to the days and nights that followed. Something keeps her turning and turning these moments in her mind. Something. She is no longer sure she wants to find out what.